Well, Dwight, very nice to have you here. It's been a while since we've met in person, but so welcome again to Postpone Blockchain Day.
Thank you.
So I do have two questions for you. Um, One's more about BCW, and the other is more about sort of what you think about layer twos. So the first question, obviously, BCW Group has been building in Web3 and investing in Web3 since 2018
Yep.
for quite a few years.
Yep.
100
Very
years
old.
in traditional time.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what do you think we're in the adoption curve in terms of mass adoption of the blockchain technology?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, yeah, we've been around for, I guess, a very long time, as you said, in crypto years. So we've seen numerous cycles as compared to most, and so probably do have quite an interesting view on it. From our perspective, as a enterprise solutions and venture studio, we're very focused on infrastructure because we think that we need better picks and shovels being put into the hands of developers if they're going to create the products that the next billion people are going to come onto Web3 for. And when you look at a lot of that core infrastructure at the moment, it's still quite lacking. And so we spend a lot of our time, especially when we're building stuff for enterprises, seeing gaps in a market where it's like, hey, maybe there's a product here, and then sort of building that product out and then putting it to market. And so some examples of that type of stuff is like DeFi tooling, RPC companies. So if you're building on top of a blockchain, you either need to have a copy of the database, i.e. run a node, or use what's called an RPC company where you're doing API calls to it. And so if you're trying to get a Web 2 company to build on Web 3, you need that tooling set and that developer toolkit in order to actually have them quickly build on the technology, as opposed to trying to do it the more difficult way of running a node and then trying to access it. So we definitely think from an adoption perspective, we need to solve a bunch of these problems in order to move to the next phase.
So an extra question actually. So before we move on to the layer two question, so obviously BCW has products that's built on multiple chains.
Yep.
Previously, I think you worked with Abelian, which is obviously has a post-quantum feature to it.
Yep.
And we've worked a lot with Hedera, obviously.
Yep. Also post-quantum feature.
Yeah, also feature. And with regards to layer twos, so there's obviously one of the major trends in the previous cycle in the Web3 space. And BCW is working with, as far as I know, Polygon, which is one of the layer twos. So could you give us an update into some of the key developments in the ecosystem and what you guys expect to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, we've been with Polygon since the start. We won 2 of the 100 nodes on the network. And so I've always seen that, in order to get true scaling and the true transaction count that you need to have proper use cases, you need to be doing it in certain ways, one of which is through L2 scaling. And so we've obviously worked with the Polygon team quite a lot since the early days, and even more so now and into the future. So a lot of the big trend at the moment is not just let's say the way Polygon has been doing its L2, but more into the future as we start to look at zero knowledge proof L2 scaling solutions. And so this basically means that on that L2, you're having a lot of transactions, sometimes up to 10,000 transactions per second, but then using the security of the L1 and the link between those two through a zero knowledge algorithm to secure it. And I think the interesting thing that you're seeing, not just with that scaling solution, but the fact that you can basically spin up a chain on demand, which means you can spin up a chain, I can spin up a chain, anyone can spin up a chain, powered by Polygon. There's an aggregation layer in there where you can get unified liquidity between them. And the same thing applies to ZK Sync. So we work with Matter Labs as well as Polygon. And so as these companies start to produce their own chains on top, the fact that there's interoperability between all those, I think is a very powerful thing that we'll see a lot of new innovation come over the next couple of years.
Last question. So I think you were at the front row seat listening to my boss, Dr. Duncan Wong, when he was talking about Abelian and upcoming layer to QA. So what do you think about merging the integration of layer 2 scaling and quantum security?
Absolutely, and I think probably now's the right time to start, which is obviously why Duncan and you guys are thinking about it so much, because we're going to get quantum solved solutions to cryptography probably, let's say, the next 5-10 years. And then you're going to have obviously a massive security hole in all of this technology if we don't upgrade the cryptographic nature of all of the chains. As you said, Algorand, Hedera, they've got this, but it's like as a bolt-on afterwards. I'm not sure how much they're actually focused on doing it. Whereas Albian's actually right now going, no, now's the time. We need to get ready for it. Because I think also what a lot of people don't think about is a lot of that data that we've got in the past, someone could just mine that and then later go and solve those simple cryptographics and steal tokens. Or exactly, yeah. So if you guys are doing this from the start, it means that pretty much everything that you're going to be building is going to be quantum resistant from the start. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess thank you again for being here.
No, pleasure.
Catch up with you.
Yes, excellent. Thank you, sir.